The other day I was thinking about whether there was a subject everyone could agree on, one concept, thing or belief that defies labels. Then it hit me. The one thing that is universally loved, that can inspire warring sides to peace, bring people together, and unite the world in a harmonious chorus of love is our collective adoration for the federal government. The CIA is the artist behind all your favourite hits, with generation-defining releases like War in Indochina and chart toppers such as committing acts of violent terrorism against American military and civilian targets, blaming them on the Cuban government and using it to justify a war against Cuba. False flag operations aside, today we're going to be fondly reminiscing about the time Disney joined forces with the CIA. It's the mid-1960s, and Walt Disney, after much deliberation and inspection of different sites, has settled on the area of land he will seek to build the largest amusement park ever constructed, Disneyland, Florida. Wanting to mirror the success of his Anaheim park in California, Walt was intent on building a Disney World resort on the East Coast, but this time he had something different in mind. In the years leading up to this, Walt had become infatuated with the idea of a utopian planned community that would serve as a testbed for society's cutting-edge ideas and standards of living. He called this the Epcot Project. The only issue with all of this was the land, or more specifically its current owners. Inevitably, upon hearing that Disney were in the market for their land, sellers were likely to significantly raise their prices, knowing that the company was beholden to their decision to sell. To circumvent this problem, Disney turned to Bill Donovan, former head of the OSS, lawyer, and the father of the CIA. With the help of Donovan's New York law firm, Disney set up a group of shell corporations. Using these shell corporations, Disney approached landowners under false pretenses, offering to buy their land. Disney managed to secure swathes of land for as little as $80 an acre. By the time any suspicion was raised, Disney had already acquired 27,000 acres. Upon the announcement of the company's intention to build an Orlando resort, the price of land in the areas Disney had targeted shot up to as high as $80,000 an acre, but it was too late. Disney had what they wanted. The only question that remained was how Walt could exercise control over his fresh territory. This task was entrusted to another CIA officer and lawyer, Paul Helliwell, a man whose resume included smuggling arms into Burma over the course of a decade and the creation of Bahamas-based Castle Bank and Trust, which financed CIA operations against Cuba, including the Bay of Pigs invasion, which Paul was personally involved in. Paul suggested employing a tactic the agency had used many times during his service. The idea was as follows. Two phantom cities would be established in the area, the city of Bay Lake and the city of Lake Buena Vista. The existence of these two cities allowed Disney to establish governments on their territory that could in turn be used to exercise this governmental power for whatever Disney saw fit. This approach meant that as long as a few of Disney's well-compensated civilians maintained residency in the cities and voted every election cycle to keep Disney executives in power, the company could retain complete control in perpetuity. Alongside this, another phantom municipality was fabricated, the infamous Reedy Creek Improvement District. This district was signed into law with the other cities that Helliwell had proposed in the Reedy Creek Improvement Act. This legislation was paid for and written by Disney and its associates, with lawmakers openly admitting that once it was sent their way by Disney's California office, the bill was never read before being enacted into law. The act, besides creating the three phantoms, established the improvement district as a county government and made Disney essentially exempt from taxation. It also made the district the provider of essential community elements such as emergency services, education, and sanitation. Making the district a county government designated park revenue as public funds, allowing Disney to not only evade tax on the money, but also keep the flow of cash within the company. The RCIA is the piece of legislation that enabled rigged elections and granted Disney the power of self-government. And suddenly, as if by magic, the Walt Disney Company had transcended law and order. Now, this video isn't actually all about the creation of Disneyland. It's also about a little-known town called Celebration, Florida. Originally, Walt Disney intended to build the Epcot project somewhere in his new Central Florida autocracy. Epcot was never realised in the capacity that Walt had imagined, but Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney from 1984 to 2005, took a special interest in the concept. Early in the 90s, the Celebration Company was formed, tasked with the construction of their Epcot-esque master plan community. With over $2.5 billion of investment, Disney collaborated with world-leading experts on health, education, lifestyle, city planning, and architecture to bring their founders' vision to life. In 1996, Celebration Florida was founded. The first townspeople were chosen at random through a lottery. This was done partly to avoid racial bias in the housing of residents. By the year 2000, just under 2,500 people had moved into Celebration. Upon moving to the idyllic community, residents were presented with a set of rules. They restricted the colours of residents' houses, their number of cars, the weight of their pets, the colour of any window blinds, any change to their front lawn, and mandated the presence of one Mickey Mouse somewhere in each of the homes. While the concept behind Celebration was certainly unique, the town itself grew to become something of a monolithic structure in the heart of Florida. However, beyond the facade of a perfect town that had been created, real issues came bubbling to the surface. In 1998, 3 men visiting Florida on a road trip went missing in the Celebration area. After an extensive investigation into their whereabouts and dozens of surveys of Florida's seemingly endless swampland, signs pointed to the trio entering Celebration, but never leaving. 9 months after they were reported missing, a car, their car, was pulled from the bottom of one of Celebration's retention ponds with all 3 men inside. Investigators had finally decided to look there, citing a history of many vehicles ending up in the water. In the months prior to their discovery, 5 cars had plunged into the water, including one teenage girl who was killed on impact. The pond lies 15 feet below the level of the road, almost impossible to see from a driver's perspective. If a traveller were to miss the stop sign allowing them to turn onto Celebration Boulevard, as the young men did, they could go flying into what has been dubbed Death Pond. Since then, safety precautions including barriers and warnings have been erected where they were once absent, seeking to prevent a similar occurrence. Even after multiple fatal crashes at Death Pond and a home invasion in the same year, Celebration maintained its image of the idyllic, albeit slightly creepy community. In November 2010, however, the mask slipped once again. Neighbours of the local school teacher, Mr. Matteo Giovendito, called the police to report that they had not seen him come nor go for several days. When the police entered the home, they found that the teacher had been strangled with a shoelace and subsequently axed to death, the town's first ever murder. Following the arrest of one David Zeno Murillo, who admitted to the crime, saying that Mr. Giovendito had made sexual advances towards him, several of the slain man's former pupils came forward alleging that the teacher had committed all manner of sexual abuse towards them. One mother in the community went so far as to describe Giovendito as a cunning paedophile predator who had developed an abusive relationship with her 10-year-old son that lasted years. Rocked by the sudden murder and subsequent revelations, the town could not have foreseen what would happen next. Just days after the killing, Craig Fushi, a 52-year-old man going through a bitter divorce and significant financial troubles, barricaded himself in his house that was due to be foreclosed. This began a 14-hour standoff and firefight with the local sheriff's department. Fushi shot at the police multiple times over the course of the next day, culminating in the authorities breaching his home to find him dead from self-inflicted wounds. It seemed that, for a while, things died down in Celebration, besides the allegedly rampant adultery and divorce between the town's residents, that is. But in 2019, the town was once again thrust into the headlines. Anthony Todd, a physiotherapist, landed in some legal trouble after it was discovered he had been charging patients for treatment he never delivered. Anthony was using the stolen money to not only pay for his house in Celebration, but also trips to Disney World. On one of these trips, his wife Megan contracted Lyme disease from a tick bite. After recovering from the affliction, she reportedly suffered bouts of depression and was never the same again. Anthony maintained his innocence while being investigated, but eventually admitted to his fraudulent activities. Then one day, the Todd family disappeared from the public eye altogether. Anthony's legal issues continued, however. The suffocating pressure of his 6-figure debt led to an eviction notice being placed on his door and eventually the issuing of an arrest warrant. When the police arrived to place Mr. Todd under arrest, they made a grisly discovery. Searching the family home, they would find Anthony's wife and 3 children in various stages of decomposition in different beds across the house, as well as the family dog slain in its bed. Anthony himself had exited the home as the authorities arrived, behaving strangely, and was later found to have consumed a large quantity of Benadryl. It remains unclear why Anthony took the lives of his family, as his reasoning for the crimes changed near constantly throughout the investigation. He was found guilty on all 4 counts of murder in the first degree in 2022. Now that we've taken a deep dive into the grim past of Disney's failed utopia, we can look forward to its future. When Disney was deftly excising the land that then became Disney World and Celebration, there arose an issue with their plan to curb voting rights in the area. As previously mentioned, by installing a puppet population in their phantom cities, they maintained control through rigged election cycles predicated on the fact that to elect a councilman, you had to own land in the area. Once they began selling homes in Celebration, however, that suddenly became a problem. Realizing that residents of Celebration now actually owned houses on their land, Disney had legislature passed that excluded the town's population from Disney's municipalities, thus preventing them from voting for elected officials. This was later changed to allow Celebration citizens the right to vote, but Disney's attempted constitutional breaches wouldn't stop there. More recently, however, there has been some accountability for perhaps one of the longest and most egregious tax evasion operations in American history. In 2022, it was voted that the Reedy Creek Improvement Act would be repealed, thereby putting an end to Disney's near omnipotence. This comes into effect in June of 2023 and marks a gigantic shift in the power balance of Central Florida. Okay, that just about concludes my recounting of one of Disney's darker endeavors. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something you perhaps didn't know. I'm aware that this is far and away the most dark piece of content I have ever produced, and trust me, I'm no true crime buff, so this isn't going to become a regular theme. JCS Psychology videos obviously still fucking rock, and next time he uploads, I will be consuming that shit immediately. Besides that, thank you all very much for watching, and stay greasy, friends.